Welcome back to the Dear Global Leader podcast solo episode, already number 4. So today in this episode we'll discuss a bit of a mirror episode with the episode 1, if you remember, about scalability. We're discussing here scalability of a project, and I think it's really interesting to also look at the scalability of the digital model and of the service. It's something that is becoming more and more relevant in our industry and time of today. So today the topic of the episode will be about Spotify and what can we learn about this giant of the streaming industry and how Spotify really successfully scaled globally. So Spotify, you may already know, has been founded in Stockholm in 2006. It was the area of the music industry being illegally streamed, and this became an idea of the Spotify and how we could standardize this and make it a big business. But behind this big podcast and music giant, there is really a masterclass of the how to scale the digital model globally. So this will be the discussion of today, and I'm really excited to decrypt this business. So let's start with some data and numbers. I think we all love that. So Spotify is currently available in more than 180 countries, and it also has 600 million active users. And as you may know, you can have Spotify for free, but also at a premium level. And 230 million people have a premium membership, meaning that they pay a subscription to access Spotify, which is already a good percentage of this. We also want to know that Spotify has a market share of 30% in the global music streaming industry, besides the rest of the competition with Apple Music, for example. And the first pillar of the strategy of Spotify for this global expansion was really starting with the global freemium model that they continue to keep, apparently. So in Sweden, in 2006, they started the expansion through the European geography, and then in 2011, they went to the US, and then they aggressively scaled up globally to Middle East, to Africa, but also to India. And all this came to the network effect. When you have this freemium model, it brings more users suddenly, but also more content, more artists, and all this generates drives on your platform and makes it easier to scale. So this was really one of the first strategy of Spotify that really worked perfectly with the digital model. And looking back at this global expansion, you may remember the episode 1 and 2 where we discuss the local adaptativeness and the flexibility of the offer, but also the cultural understanding. And this is the second pillar also of this description, is that Spotify really market by market label the right artist for the right market. They understand that in different region there were a different billboard and a different ranking of the music, and they try to really accommodate the tastes of the audience that were used in different countries. As you may know, in India it was more of the Bollywood songs that were preferred by this audience. In the US, it was more of the hip-hop songs that were appreciated. And in Latin America, as another example, it was more the reggaeton. So Spotify really had to license local label. But as you may also know, at the beginning of Spotify, there were huge legal fights with the labels, the music labels, that didn't want to collaborate with Spotify. Nevertheless, at the opening of Spotify in India, they won 2 million of users the first week. So it was really an important development and revolution, and this was really possible for multiple reasons. The common thread of these reasons is this second pillar of the description, is this the strength of the local adaptiveness of this digital model. So basically, they adapted to the consumer models, to consumer patterns, but also the regulation. As I was saying, there were a lot of fights with the different labels, music industry, different players, and also the copyrights. And they adapted markets by market, and slowly they roll up with the understanding of the different regulation and the different negotiations. In parallel of this, as I was mentioning, their business model at the foundation of starting with a freemium and converting the maximum of users to purchase premium subscriptions, where they would have to actually pay within the app. And here again, they understood that different countries and different markets has different consumer purchasing behaviors. For example, in some of the westernized country, it's usually using a credit card subscription. So then they offered these options. But in other countries, they partners with other financial institution to be able to set up this, but also they understood that other users will prefer to have a mobile wallet and use it to pay for Spotify, for example, in Africa or in India. And all in hands, with this adaptation of the locality, they didn't copy paste the same digital model that they could have scaled because of the network effect, but they adapted around the cultural awareness and the cultural diversity of the different markets they wanted to enter in. And the third pillar of the strategy of expansion and scalability globally of Spotify was really understanding the digital platform model. So when you are a digital platform model, usually you do not own the content and the product, meaning that here in the case of Spotify, they are not artists, they are not creating the music, they are not uploading themselves the content. And so they are already in a business model with the artists. And then there are the second part, like the interface with the market, with the users and the listener, to make available this content. So they really are the platform, and this could work because the users to come to the platform wanted the platform to be free. So they made this platform within a freemium model. So for some, it can be free. And if you want access to more functionalities, you can have it as a premium, and then they can make money. But at the same time, they also needed to make money for the artists. And with network effects, more user joins, more artists uploaded the music, and so on. And then some advertisers decided to invest and add the promotions. Something that were also really interesting with Spotify is that before Spotify, you could only listen to one artist or one disc altogether. And they created the concept of the playlist, where you could also create your own, but also they were creating the local playlist. So for a region, as we were discussing before, they were making available some local playlists that would help people to find new music in the same taste of the region. So this was also something really interesting that they added as the platform, the provider. So they really understood their role, meaning owning the discovery and the personalization of the platform, but not the product, and be really this great interface between the market and not the manufacturer, but like the suppliers and the market. So all in hand, they standardized the experience within the app, but they added the local to local algorithm and playlist and content. And this was really a part of the success of Spotify. If we now look at the competition, maybe the second biggest platform or two second biggest platform we can think of, we'll just take Apple Music, for example, didn't have the same the same launch globally at the beginning, because in the case of the Apple Music, they decided to strengthen the ecosystem, meaning that you need already to be a part of the platform to have access to the platform. And this limited a bit their global reach. But when we go outside of the global player, it's also interesting to look at the local competition. In some markets, due to the governments and other interface, it can be very hard to enter. And this is where, for example, Spotify is banned in China. So of course they have some trouble to enter in this market. And because of this, it explains also in other countries sometimes the preference to local markets or local platforms. And now we will look at the takeaways of this episode on launching a digital global business. So number one, Spotify used the freemium model, and this helped to really be the first entry door and lower the first entry barriers, scale fast, and also you can monetize later, which is what they did after that they could attract a lot of users, get them loyal, love the app, and then monetize. Secondly, is the local relevance to drive the global growth. I think it's super interesting by adapting market to market, as we already looked at it. So the playlist, the payment, the infrastructure, and so on, the regulation, you can actually grow globally. And lastly, in the digital part, owning the interface of the platform always beats the product because you have less cost and less infrastructure, you can scale fast. Spotify didn't had to own the music. They own the interface and the user experience, and they also could rule the industry around it. What I really loved about this episode is that we are becoming more and more service-oriented, digital model, and the real question is like, what is your Spotify playbook for your companies? You can also own the product, but what is important is if you go towards the digitalization, what is your business model? Because with digitalization, it's easier to go across borders and transfer your product or your service across the border. But it's really interesting to see that even in the digital world, going globally will mean to adapt locally. So it's all for this episode. I hope that it was also helpful to you. And as always, if you have some comments on some insights, feel free to like comments below. And also, if you love the episode, feel free to like give it a good rating, so 5 stars, and on any platform you're listening to. And also, don't forget to subscribe. So I see you in the next episode. Bye.